One of the things that I said during the primaries, during the general election, is that I kept bringing the attention back to the fact that America and American institutions have a momentum of their own that is all but impossible for a single person to change. And to be more specific, I was saying that there are certain things that every American president does and that any American president going forward is likely to do. I even threw in Bernie Sanders in this group. There are certain things that Bernie Sanders, if he had been elected president, that he would have done that was going to be exactly the same thing that Hillary Clinton would have done, and now clearly what Donald Trump is doing. And a lot of people are like, oh, no, you could get a president who's strong enough. You know, they throw in, FDR. I get that. But you have to understand FDR actually came before and at the tail end of setting the global order in motion, the stability that we have now. He was a part of building that. Right. So but after World War II, if you look at the actions of American presidents, they have been very, very consistent on economic policies, give or take tax policy and tax reform, and what the top 1% pays in taxes. Right. There's some variations there. But in terms of fiscal policy, it's been very similar. In terms of foreign policy, it has been the most consistent. And people thought that Donald Trump was just going to come in and be a strong man and set some type of different policy on foreign policy that to be this non-interventionist and be America first. No, I don't even think Jill Stein, if she could have gotten over 0.1%, would be able to change the momentum of the United States institutions, American institutions. You could call it the deep state if you want. I don't care to call it the deep state because the deep state gives this nefarious impression and makes it almost this mystical thing that the Illuminati is in control of America. And it really, I think it's much simpler than that. I think America is underneath the control of institutions and bureaucracies that are entrenched, that have cultures, that have what we in corporate America you'll call a corporate culture. We have a bureaucratic culture in each of these institutions. I mean, look at the Pentagon. It has its own zip code. It's its own city with thousands of people who work at this one facility as career politicians, career bureaucrats, career military experts. They are there for their entire career. And they inherit a worldview, they inherit ideologies, they inherit policies and procedures. And those policies and procedures, ideologies and worldviews are birthed in them again. And then they pass it on to their replacements. There's a better word for it. I can't think of it right now. So it's like a family. I'm doing a lot of the similar things that my dad did, just doing them upgraded. I'm doing them a little differently. I'm about the same height as my dad. I'm about the same weight as my dad. There's a lot of stuff that I inherited from my family that I just can't quite really get away from. That is America, man. We've been passing the military, and let's get specific. The military industrial complex has been a problem since before Dwight Eisenhower identified it, but it has been consistently passed down from president to president to president with very little change. I mean, marginal change. I think if someone were to do, this is just my hypothesis. I'm just going to float this out here. If someone was to do a statistical analysis of the variation in foreign policy actions by presidents, I would argue, I would guess, make a hypothesis that you're going to find a difference, a variation that is not statistically significant. In other words, you're not going to really find that any president does anything differently than the other president would have done. And we're seeing that right now played out. This is something that I talked about for the last 2 years that I've been doing this show, that it is the momentum of the United States, particularly the bureaucracies, particularly the institutions that have been built around entire worldviews. That is what takes grip of a president when they go into the White House. And so you could have all of the lofty ideals and goals as you want, But the reality of it is that the job is so broad and so deep and so massive that you have to depend on hundreds of people who are considered experts and people who are career. They have been in these career positions for their entire career. And so you're taking advice from people who have their own worldview that, quite frankly, could be completely antithetical to your worldview. But when a disaster strikes and you need options from professionals, if every one of your professionals are part of the military industrial complex, do you really think you're going to be able to push back on them with an alternative? I think of one president that comes to mind that actually did this, John Kennedy. He did this particularly with the Cuban Missile Crisis. He had to fight with everything he had just to keep us from going to nuclear war, because that's pretty much what the military at the time was going through. Their policies and procedures were going to lead us to. So it's not entirely impossible, but I'm still going to hold on to my loose hypothesis here. My apologies to my professors for not setting it up properly. But my hypothesis is that even if you factor in John Kennedy's shirking of the military industrial complex and the Pentagon, you're not going to find that a single president post World War II has changed the momentum of the United States in a statistically significant fashion. In other words, they're all doing the same damn thing that the other damn president was going to do. And this is what you're getting with Donald Trump. Now, am I saying that a person shouldn't try? No. I'm saying you got to know what the hell you're dealing with if you're going to ever get an opportunity to change it. And I'm also saying if we're going to change it, you got to have something to fight with. You got to have alternative theories. You have to have alternative and competing institutions. You have to have alternative and competing fundraising. You cannot fight this war machine with just fancy slogans and snark. You can't do it. It doesn't work like that. All we're doing, in my opinion, this is my honest, heartfelt opinion. All we're doing is as people who prefer peace, whether you're a pacifist, whether you're anti-war, anti-imperialist, in many ways, I feel like we're just participating in this kabuki theater because we are, like clockwork, regurgitating the same snark and talking points and outrage that has been regurgitated almost in every single peace movement, every single anti-war, anti-imperialist movement. And you know what? It's not saying that we're doing anything bad. It's just we're not doing the complete job. Because if all we do is shout about the problem, then we're never going to give an actual competing paradigm. And the military industrial complex gets to go about its business and do what it's created to do, what it does so well, which is to wage war.